All right, buckle up, everybody. We're diving deep into Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. We're going to figure out why this book still matters, like centuries later, and what you can take away from it today.
Yeah, it really makes you think about some big stuff, morality, justice, redemption, all that.
Exactly. And we've got excerpts from the novel itself to help us along the way. Think of this deep dive as a guided tour through Dostoevsky's world.
A pretty dark world, but super fascinating, too.
Totally. Let's jump right into this whole crime and punishment thing, huh? The book doesn't hold back. Does bad stuff always lead to suffering? Is justice straightforward or way more messy?
Dostoevsky was obsessed with this stuff, the psychology of it all. He knew there weren't any easy answers, no black and white morality. Justice wasn't just about the law or what happens to you on the outside.
Makes sense. Look at Raskolnikov, our main guy. He does this horrible murder, but it seems like the real punishment is happening inside him, this mental torture.
Exactly. When he confesses to Sonia, it's more than just admitting what he did, right? It's the emotional and spiritual weight of it all. Like, it tears him apart inside.
And Sonia's response is so powerful. You have renounced God, and God has struck you down, giving you over to the devil. She's basically saying he's cut himself off from his own morals, from any kind of bigger meaning.
You got it. Dostoevsky was really religious, and that comes through in his writing. The spiritual consequences mattered just as much as the legal ones to him. And Sonia kind of represents that belief in faith and all that.
I'm also struck by Raskolnikov's obsession with Napoleon, with being this, extraordinary man above regular morality. I contribute to his downfall?
Oh, the whole Superman complex. Classic. He thinks he's special, not bounding the same rules as everyone else. It makes him arrogant, and eventually, it lets him justify his crime.
He comes up with this made-up logic to make it okay. Remember when he thinks if Napoleon had had nothing to begin his career with but some ridiculous old woman, a pawnbroker, whom he had to kill to get money from her trunk? For his career, you understand. Would he have stopped short? So disturbing.
It's dark but insightful, too. Dostoevsky shows us how dangerous intellectual pride can be, how good we are at fooling ourselves. Raskolnikov thinks he's doing something noble, but deep down, it's all selfish.
Yeah, that self-deception thing is really relatable. It makes you think about how we all justify our actions, sometimes even when we kind of know it's wrong.
Definitely. Dostoevsky's brilliance is how he shows us that darkness inside all of us, that temptation we all feel to do bad stuff and then explain it away.
So let's talk about St. Petersburg itself. It's more than just a setting, right? It's practically another character in the book.
For sure. St. Petersburg back then was a city of extremes, crushing poverty, unrest, and the sense that things were morally falling apart. It kind of reflects what's going on inside Raskolnikov.
Yeah, all those descriptions of the claustrophobic streets, the heat, the poverty all around him. It's like the city is a mirror of his mental state, pushing him further and further down.
Dostoevsky was amazing at using setting to create atmosphere and tension, like psychological tension. St. Petersburg becomes this symbol of all the things are closing in on Raskolnikov, the things that lead to his crime and ultimately his breakdown.
That image of him counting 730 steps to the pawnbroker's apartment, it's like his anxiety's making him super aware of everything around him. He needs to control everything.
It's brilliant how he uses those little details, The city becomes like a projection of Raskolnikov's own messed up mind.
Let's talk about Sonia. She's the opposite of everything Raskolnikov represents. She's poor, forced into prostitution, but she's got this deep faith and compassion that's so striking compared to how grim everything else is. What do you think her role is in the story?
Sonia, she's maybe the most interesting character in the whole book. She's got this unshakable faith and selflessness that seems almost impossible, with all the crap she's going through. But Dostoevsky doesn't make her naive. Her faith, it's hard-earned. It's come from all the pain and crap she's lived through.
Right. It's not blind faith. It's faith that's been, tested in the fire. And that's what lets her offer Raskolnikov a chance at redemption.
Exactly. Sonia becomes his moral compass, pushing him to confess, to seek forgiveness. She believes that even in the darkest places, there's always that possibility of redemption.
Their relationship is so complex, so full of tension, but also tenderness. It's like she sees something in him, some goodness he can't even see in himself anymore.
Yeah, their dynamic is key to the whole story. It's like these two worldviews clashing, right? You've got Raskolnikov's nihilism, his despair, and then you've got Sonia's faith. Through them, Dostoevsky explores, is there hope? Is there redemption in a world that seems to have neither?
I'm really drawn to the scene where Sonia reads him the story of Lazarus. It's such a powerful image, so symbolic.
Yeah, that scene is huge for understanding how Sonia influences him. The Lazarus story is about resurrection, about new life after death. It foreshadows what could happen to Raskolnikov, his potential to, be reborn spiritually, to come back from the depths of despair and find a new beginning.
It's like she's giving him a way out of the darkness he's trapped in, a way to face his guilt and ask for forgiveness.
Exactly. She represents the possibility of transcendence, of finding meaning even when you're surrounded by suffering. She embodies that idea that even the most broken people can find redemption through faith, love, and compassion.
And that tension between despair and hope, between the harsh realities of 19th century Russia and the power of the human spirit, that's what makes Crime and Punishment so timeless, so captivating, even now.
I couldn't agree more. It's not just a story, it's a philosophical journey, a psychological journey. It forces us to look at the complexity of human nature and these eternal questions about guilt, punishment, and if redemption's even possible.
So we were talking about Sonia and how she's this, light in the darkness of Dostoevsky's world. It's amazing how she keeps her faith, even though she's going through so much herself.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. But her faith isn't just some naive thing, right? It's a source of strength that comes from, facing all that suffering head on. She represents a different kind of justice, one that's about compassion and forgiveness instead of just getting even.
And then there's Porfiry Petrovich, the guy investigating the crime. He's not your average detective, huh?
Nope, not at all. Porfiry, he's like a master psychologist. He gets that the real battle with Raskolnikov is happening up here, Tap's head. So he plays these mind games, subtly poking at his conscience, pushing him to confess.
Man, those scenes where they're going back and forth are intense. It's like Porfiry can see right through Raskolnikov, tearing down all his justifications one by one. Almost like he's orchestrating Raskolnikov's breakdown.
You got it. He knows that just arresting him wouldn't be real justice. He wants Raskolnikov to truly face his guilt, to understand the weight of what he did, morally speaking.
Porfiry thinks the real punishment comes from inside, from realizing you screwed up.
Exactly. He knows that being punished by the law, that's just one piece of it. Real justice, it's about that inner reckoning, that self-reflection, that whole repentance thing.
And speaking of reckoning, let's talk about Siberia. After he confesses, Raskolnikov gets sent there to do hard labor. It feels like more than just a physical punishment, right?
Oh, for sure. Siberia in the book, it's almost symbolic, like a purgatory. That's where Raskolnikov can face his past and start trying to make things right.
And then Sonia follows him there. Even in this bleak, desolate place, she's still there for him, giving him hope.
That's Sonia for you. Totally devoted. It shows how powerful love and forgiveness can be, even when there's so much suffering around.
But even with Sonia there, Raskolnikov's journey back to, being a good person, it ain't easy. He's haunted by what he did, full of guilt and doubt.
Oh yeah, that internal struggle, it doesn't just go away. Dostoevsky doesn't make redemption a simple thing. It's a long, hard road full of setbacks.
The way Dostoevsky uses dreams is interesting. They're so vivid, so disturbing, like they're showing us Raskolnikov's deepest fears.
Dreams is huge in this book. They give us a peek into his messed-up mind, how he's trying to deal with the enormity of his crime.
That dream where he's a kid watching a horse get beaten, that one's really stuck with me. So brutal, so much suffering.
That dream, it tells us about Raskolnikov's deep empathy. He feels the pain of others, but it also kind of foreshadows his own turn to violence, how he becomes both a witness and a perpetrator of suffering.
And then there's that dream where he goes back to the murder scene, but this time he can't kill the old woman. That one really got to me.
Yeah, that's a big one. It suggests that on some level, Raskolnikov's already feeling remorseful, even before he confesses. Like his subconscious is saying, hey, I wish things had gone differently.
Like a part of him wants redemption, even while he's trying to justify what he did when he's awake.
Exactly. Dostoevsky uses dreams to mess with the line between what's real and what's not, It makes Raskolnikov and the reader really confront the whole mess of guilt, punishment, and whether redemption's even possible.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about some of the other characters in this crazy world. We've covered Sonia and Porfiry, but there are so many others who add to how rich and psychologically intense the book is.
Oh yeah, Dostoevsky was a master at creating these multifaceted characters, each one representing a different piece of humanity, a different take on the moral dilemmas of the book.
Svidrigailov, he really intrigues me. He's so dark, so mysterious, almost like a nihilistic counterpoint to Raskolnikov.
Yeah, Svidrigailov, he embodies this worldview that's both fascinating and kind of creepy. He's got money, privilege, but he seems to have lost all sense of purpose, just chasing pleasure like he's on a path to self-destruction.
The way he acts around Bunya, Raskolnikov's sister, it's so unsettling. He's drawn to her, but also kind of repulsed by how good she is. Like he wants to corrupt her.
His behavior towards Denya, it shows how cynical he is, how he can't connect with people on a real level. She's like a challenge to him, a way to see how far he can push his own messed up beliefs.
But even though he's so depraved, he does some unexpectedly generous things too. Like he helps Sonia and her family with money, which seems totally out of character.
Yeah, those moments make him even more complex. Like maybe there's a tiny bit of compassion buried in there somewhere, but then he kills himself, which shows just how much despair he's hiding under all that hedonism.
That suicide, it's definitely a shocker. It kind of says that living just for pleasure and yourself, it leads to emptiness and, well, despair.
It's a harsh reminder that real happiness, it doesn't come from chasing those fleeting pleasures. You need something more, something bigger than yourself, to find real meaning.
Now, on the total opposite end of the spectrum, there's Luzhin, Dunya's fiancé. Ugh, he is just the worst. No morals whatsoever.
Luzhin, he's a classic Dostoevsky villain, right? He represents all the bad stuff in humanity: greed, hypocrisy, zero empathy. He's a social climber who wants to marry Dunya just to make himself look better and to control her, since he thinks she's vulnerable.
And when he tries to frame Sonia for stealing, that just shows how ruthless he is. He'd totally destroy someone's life just to get ahead.
Yeah, that's a low blow. It shows what he's really like. Luzhin's a master manipulator. He hides his true intentions behind this facade of being respectable. He's like the embodiment of the hypocrisy and corruption Dostoevsky saw all around him in Russia back then.
It's interesting how he contrasts Svidrigailov and Luzhin, right? They're both morally corrupt, but in totally different ways.
That's what makes the book so fascinating. Dostoevsky doesn't give us easy answers about who's good and who's bad. He throws this whole range of human behavior at us, makes us think about the choices we make and how they shape us.
Then you've got Marmeladov, Sonia's dad. Such a tragic character, completely consumed by drinking and despair, can't even take care of his own family.
Marmeladov, he shows what crushing poverty can do to a person, how it can destroy lives and families. He knows he's messed up, but he feels powerless to change anything.
That scene where he confesses to Raskolnikov in the tavern, man, it's heartbreaking. You can feel the shame, the despair, as he talks about becoming an alcoholic, about hurting his family.
Yeah, that scene key because it shows us the bigger picture, the social stuff that led to Raskolnikov's crime. Marmeladov represents all the people stuck in poverty and despair, victims of a system that doesn't give them a chance.
Like Dostoevsky is saying, crime isn't just a personal thing. It's often because of bigger social forces like the inequality and injustice that makes people desperate.
Exactly. Crime and Punishment, it's not just a psychological thriller, it's a social commentary too, a critique of a society that fails to take care of its people, especially the vulnerable ones.
And what about Dunya, Raskolnikov's sister? She's strong, independent, willing to sacrifice herself to help her family.
Dunya, she's got a different kind of strength, one that comes from compassion and loyalty. She's fierce when it comes to protecting her brother, even though what he did disgust her. And she stands up for herself, too, like when she rejects Luzhin's proposal.
She's complicated, for sure, both vulnerable and resilient. She's trapped in this patriarchal society that doesn't give her many options, but she still fights for her dignity, her independence.
Her character adds a whole other layer to how the book explores social dynamics. She shows the struggles women faced in 19th century Russia, how society pushed them into making tough choices.
Okay, so with all these characters and their stories in mind, let's dig into some of the bigger philosophical stuff the novel brings up.
Because Dostoevsky, he wasn't just trying to tell a good story, right? He wanted to tackle the big questions: good and evil, the meaning of suffering, whether redemption's even possible.
One thing that keeps popping up is nihilism. This idea that life has no meaning, that all the traditional values and morals are pointless. How does that play out in the novel?
Well, nihilism was a big thing in Russia back then, and Dostoevsky was worried about it. He thought it was dangerous, destructive, that it could lead to, like, moral chaos and the whole society falling apart.
It feels like Raskolnikov is flirting with those nihilistic ideas, especially before the murder. He thinks he's above all that morality stuff, that he can break the rules everyone else has to follow.
Yeah, that whole Superman philosophy, it's what leads him to think his actions are okay. He tells himself he's serving some greater good, but it's really elegance and despair driving him.
But the book also pushes back against nihilism, right? Through Sonia, even Porfiry, they believe in something bigger than themselves, a moral compass guiding their actions.
Exactly. Dostoevsky wasn't saying nihilism was right. He was exploring it, showing how complex it is and what could happen if you followed it too far. Through his characters, he's trying to answer this huge question: how do we find meaning when the world seems so chaotic and absurd?
I'm also really into how the book deals with suffering and redemption. It seems like Dostoevsky thought suffering was like a necessary part of being human, something that helps you grow spiritually.
Absolutely. To him, suffering wasn't something to avoid. It was a chance to look inward, face your flaws, and maybe find a way to redeem yourself.
And we see that with Raskolnikov, right? All the mental anguish, his time in Siberia, it all leads to him eventually changing.
It's like suffering is this fire where his character gets tested and refined. It burns away all the BS, forces him to face what he did and try to really atone for it.
It's a tough concept, but it's also deep. It suggests that even the worst experiences can have meaning, that we grow and change the most when we're hurting.
That's a big takeaway from Crime and Punishment. It's saying the human spirit is incredibly strong, that even when you're surrounded by despair, there's always hope, forgiveness, and the possibility of coming back from the brink.
Okay, so we've walked the dark streets of St. Petersburg with Raskolnikov, gotten inside his messed up head. Now let's talk about how Crime and Punishment ends. It's not exactly a happily ever after kind of thing, is it?
No happy endings with Dostoevsky. He wasn't about easy answers or wrapping everything up neatly. Even when Raskolnikov confesses and takes his punishment, there's this, lingering question, is he really redeemed?
That's what makes you think, right? Did he really mean it, that confession? Or was it just Porfiry's mind games getting to him, making him crack?
Dostoevsky leaves that up to us to figure out. He wants us to think about why people do things, Even the biggest acts of repentance, maybe there's some selfishness in there, some desire to just stop hurting.
And Sonia's role in the ending is so important. She goes with him to Siberia, sticking by him, giving him that bit of hope when he's lost in despair.
She's like the embodiment of love and forgiveness, right? That unwavering belief she has in him that he can change, it's what gets him through.
But even with her, it's not easy for him. That transformation, it's slow, painful, not some sudden realization, but this gradual process of figuring himself out.
Dostoevsky knew real redemption isn't like flipping a switch. It's a journey, facing your demons, slowly rebuilding yourself after you've been shattered.
That scene where she reads him the story of Lazarus, it's like it's foreshadowing his own resurrection, his coming back to life spiritually.
Yeah, the Lazarus story, so much symbolism there, new life, even after hitting rock bottom. It offers this hope that even someone as broken as Raskolnikov can find redemption. But it takes faith, love, and being willing to go through the suffering to get there.
It's like she's planting this seed of hope in him. Maybe eventually it'll grow into true repentance, a real desire for a new life.
Exactly. She doesn't preach at him, She just shows him a different way to see things, a way to find meaning even in all the nihilistic crap he's been stuck in.
Stepping back a bit, it's amazing how relevant this book still is. It was written forever ago, but all those themes, crime, punishment, guilt, redemption, they still hit us hard today.
Because Dostoevsky, he was all about those timeless human struggles, right? His characters, they're asking the questions we still ask ourselves. What does it really mean to be good? How do we make things right when we screw up? Is redemption even possible after you do something truly terrible?
And those questions, they're more important than ever now, with all the violence, injustice, moral gray areas we see in the world every day.
Crime and Punishment forces you to look at the darkness inside yourself, to admit that we're all capable of good and bad. It reminds you that redemption might be a long, hard road, but it's worth fighting for.
Dostoevsky's writing, man, it's so powerful. He takes you right into those dark corners of the human mind, but then he shows you these glimmers of hope, of something higher.
Yeah, that's his genius. He dives deep into why people do the things they do, captures all the nuances of thoughts and feelings. That's what makes Crime and Punishment a masterpiece. It stays with you, makes you question your own beliefs, really wrestle with what it means to be human.
So to everyone listening, as you read this book, don't just focus on the story, go deeper. Think about the big questions Dostoevsky throws at you. Challenge yourself with his ideas, really connect with those characters, and when you come out the other side of this deep dive, hopefully you'll have a new appreciation for just how complex people are and how powerful hope can be, even in the darkest moments. Thanks for joining us on this journey through one of the most profound and enduring works of literature.